So, you just achieved level 80, and you're interested in learning how to get the best loot for your spec, eh? Well, look no further. My name is Agronus, and I have complete best in slot, and I'm ready to raid. And it's my privilege to be showing you how to achieve just that in today's episode of Pre-Raid Best in Slot, Retribution Paladin Edition.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the channel. My name is Sky, and today we're going to be going over pre-raid best in slot for the Retribution Paladin and Wrath of the Lich King. I want to quickly go over some super important information about hit rating, because you are a melee DPS and you need a total of 8% hit or 263 hit rating minimum in total. You need to know also that 1% hit equates out to 32.7 hit rating overall. You could also skip 3% if you're in a raid with a Shadow Priest or a Moonkin with Fairy Fire spec. If you're an Alliance player with a Draenei in your group, you could take off 1% as well. So now that you learned a little bit about hit rating and how much you need, as a Rep Paladin, you want to focus your stat priority on hit until 263, expertise until 26, strength, critical strike rating, and haste. Something to note is that you get 10 expertise from your Glyph of Seal of Vengeance, and crit is super important due to Righteous Vengeance, so you could try to keep up the damage over time effect as much as possible. To save you as much time as possible and to get the biggest power spikes as quickly as you can in your character, you want to prioritize getting weapons and trinkets, as those give the biggest jumps in power by far, no matter what class or spec you're playing. Now that all the need to know information is out of the way, let's begin with the pre-bis for Retribution Paladin. Detailed Excel spreadsheet in the description below. Starting things off, we're going to talk about the head slot, which you will have plenty of options to choose from, starting off with by far the easiest to obtain, and still yet very effective, Helm of Command. This is craftable by blacksmiths, and it gives a bunch of flat strength, crit, and the now newly loved haste stat. After that, we have the Spiked Titan Steel Helm, which is one of the top 3 helmets you can obtain, and it's amazing. I definitely pick this up if you are lacking some hit. It does also give 2 sockets, one of those being a meta gem slot, which can be easily socketed with very powerful gems to even spike this bad boy up even more. Next up, we have the engineering goggles, the charged titanium specs, which obviously are absolutely amazing to have if you have the hit cap, and it also gives a massive 109 stamina, making you much more beefy as well. This also comes with 2 sockets with a really nice socket bonus to your bis stat, crit. If you don't want to spend any gold and you'd rather just manually grind it out, your best bet would be the Chitin Shell Great Helm, which drops in Heroic Ajol Nerub off of a Nubarak. 2 sockets, which are great also, so a very powerful item as well. Nice chunk of crit rating, which is your bis stat, and it will really get you moving in the right direction. Now, one of the most exciting piece sets you can obtain, Trinkets. It's very important to note that I highly recommend grabbing one trinket that's activatable and another trinket that is a chance on hit. You definitely don't want 2 activatable trinkets because they share a small cooldown period where you can't just use them both at once. So starting things off, you have 2 very powerful trinkets from Utgard Pinnacle, the Meteorite Whetstone from King Ymirin and the Vestige of Haldor from King Ymirin as well. 2 very strong chance on hit trinkets that give 2 of your best stats, and both have really strong effects attached to them as well. Then you have the very, very powerful Sphere of Red Dragon's Blood, which drops out of Heroic Nexus from Karastraza. This trinket is massive because you can combine it with your offensive cooldowns to allow you to hit like an absolute Mack truck and give some really good hit as well if needed. Then usually for warriors, you have the Incisor's Fragment, which drops out of Heroic Draktheron Keep from King Dread. It's a really, really good trinket for warriors specifically because of the attack power and the much, much appreciated armor pen for warrior. If you can't get the Sphere of the Red Dragon's Blood, you have the Fezzik's Pocket Watch also. This comes from the Last Line of Defense questline, which is pretty solid and should not be slept on. Then you have profession trinkets like the Figurine Emerald Boar, which summons a boar and has 2 socket slots as well. The Nomish Lightning Generator, which comes from engineering, which is a pretty solid on use trinket on a very short 1-minute CD. And then lastly, you have the Dark Moon cards as well that are obviously very, very strong if you can get your hands on them. They could be very pricey though. After that, we're going to be talking about shoulders, starting off with the Gold Star Spalders, a really nice piece that you could obtain while you're finishing off your journey to 80. You can get these by getting your reputation with the Oracles to Revered. Also, if you get these guys to Exalted, you can get their trinket, which is pretty decent as well. After that, we have the Spalders of the Giant Lord, which comes from the Sons of Hodir reputation. It's literally just a better version of the previous Spalders, just with a bit more stats. It's important to note that you can get a ton of stuff with the Sons of Hodir rep. A mount, a shoulder enchant with crit and attack power, and your shoulder piece. So potentially a huge 3-in-1 there. Lastly, you have the Snake Den Pauldrons to grab. This has some haste on it and some good stats as well as a socket slot. This drops from Heroic Gundrak from Sladron. All three of these are really good, and you'll be fine with any one of them. Personally, I'll be going for the Giant Lord's shoulders from the Sons of Hodir rep and getting a nice 3-for-1 deal there. It just seems like way too powerful to pass up on. Now let's move on to the chest piece, starting things off with the chest plate of Conquest. I believe this is bind on pickup, so only blacksmiths can have this, but it's still very good attributes and stats as well, and can be worn at level 78, so that's super important to note. If you're not a blacksmith, you have a couple really good options with the engraved chestplate of Ek from Heroic Gundrak, off of Ek the Ferocious, and the Bone Grinder chestplate from Heroic Old Kingdom off of Prince Taldaram. If you need the hit, definitely go with the chestplate of Ek, and if you're hit capped, go ahead and grab the Bone Grinder. The Bone Grinder is a very big item when it comes to armor pieces. It can give an absolute ton of crit if socketed properly, so it's a very valuable item to try and grind out. Me personally, I'm going to take the extra time to make sure I have this piece, no matter what, before Naxxramas. Moving along to hands, where you're quite limited to be honest. You have two options from Heroic Dungeons, the Gauntlets of Dragon Wrath from Heroic Oculus, and Gauntlets of Capture from Heroic Violet Hold. Obviously, if you get some good luck on your side, the Gauntlets of Dragon Wrath are just honestly the best option here. So you definitely want to try to run this dungeon as much as possible to increase your chance of getting this before raid day. The Gauntlets of Capture come from Violent Hold, where you have 4 amazing BIS pieces for you that drop in there. I will most likely be going for these because Violet Hold just drops so many items for us, and I will be practically living in there for a quick minute. Lastly, if you had a bunch of extra emblems for some reason, you can get the PvP gloves. They're decent at best, but you can use them for PvP also, so I guess that's kind of a plus. Next up, we have legs, starting off with the leg plates of Bloody Reprisal, which comes from the Wormrest reputation, but you have to be exalted. It's very good specifically for warriors mostly rather than rets or death knights due to the armor penetration. Then we have the leg plates of Steel Implants from Heroic Culling, which drops off a meat hook. These are really good pants that have a nice chunk of haste on them with 2 sockets as well. Lastly, you have the staggering leg plates from Heroic Utgard Keep, which drop off of Ingvar the Plunderer. Amazing hit pants if you need the hit. Just these pants give about 2.5% hit just off of this item, pre-socketed. So it's a very big pickup if you can grab them and get lucky enough to obtain them. Moving on to bracers, we have another great crafted piece with Vengeance bindings. These come from blacksmithing, which you can either buy them or, get the mats and just have someone craft it. I highly recommend grabbing these if you desperately need some hit. After that, we have the bands of the Stoneforge, which drop out of Heroic Halls of Stone. These give a really nice amount of haste. Once again, haste is a really good stat for most melee, and it should not be slept on at all. Lastly, we have the Golden Limb bands from Heroic Azul Narub. These give a really nice amount of crit as well, but to be honest, I would definitely go with the Stoneforge bands or the Vengeance bindings here for sure though. If you're lacking the hit, get the blacksmithing bracers, and if you have all that covered, grab the Stoneforge bands for that really nice chunk of haste. You might have to run Halls of Stone quite a bit for these bad boys, but I honestly think they're very worth it. Now moving along to the waist slot, you have only really a couple options here, but they are pretty powerful. Starting off with Strategist Belt from Heroic Utgard Keep, which give a really nice amount of haste as well as a socket slot, and the Flame-Bathed Steel Girdle from Heroic Nexus. These give some really nice crit, but either way, both of these are really good, and it just entirely depends on what your stats are looking like at this point for your character, and figuring out what stat you would need more to really benefit your character more. Now moving on to the best part, and my favorite thing to go farm, weapons. Everyone's favorite part. Kicking things off, we have the Rune Blade of Demonstrable Power, which come from the Ebon Blade reputation. This weapon slaps. It gives a ton of really valuable stats and a nice chunk of agility, making for a really good raw DPS weapon. Then we have Sword of Justice, which drops out of Heroic Halls of Stone, which is a pretty good backup option if you can't get any of the others. After that, we have the Mojo Mass Crusher, which comes out of Heroic Draktheron Keep. You will be competing with a Feral Druid most likely for this one, so when you do go run this dungeon, you're trying to roll for this, make sure you don't have a feral in there. Now, obviously, we have the two fan favorites, the Titan Steel Destroyer, which comes from blacksmithing, and the Colossal Skullclad Cleaver, which comes from heroic Halls of Lightning. Both of these are just equally as good as the other. They both give super strong stats, and they're really strong for a pre-raid item. The weapon DPS is way higher than the others, the attributes are amazing, the stats are amazing. If you have one of these, you're going to crush the meters and knacks, no problem. You'll be perfectly fine in there. If hit is a bit of an issue, I'd definitely go for the Titan Steel Destroyer, but if not, that axe is going to be your go-to. It is going to swing for a lot of damage. There's a ton of attack power behind that axe. First on the list for boots, you have the Death Inured Sabatons. From the Ebon Blade reputation, getting them into Exalted. These boots are great for the 2 socket slots and a nice chunk of critical strike on them. They also make you tankier with a nice amount of stamina as well. Next, you have the Obliterator Greaves from Heroic Violet Hold. I'd recommend these mostly to warriors because of the armor pen, but the haste is still valuable to most melee as well. And lastly, you have the Rift Striders out of Heroic Nexus. I'll personally be going for these bad boys because they give a socket slot, good stats, a nice amount of critical hit, and a lot of items drop out of Nexus, so I'm definitely going to be trying to focus on these. Lastly, we have Librams, back, and jewelry pieces. For the Librams, you have 2 options. Libram of Furious Blows from the Borean Tundra questline, and then you have the Libram of Reciprocation, which comes from the Emblem Vendor. One's a little bit more RNG than the other, but they're both solid pieces that benefit you greatly come raid day. Both very solid Librams. You need one of these, without a doubt, before stepping in an axe. For back, we have the Cloak of Bloodied Waters, which is a random drop out of the Heroic Gundrock dungeon. It is a bind on equipped, so you could potentially just buy it and just sort of like be kind of cheeky with it, I guess. But if you don't have the money, I mean, you don't need to go farm this thing. Like, it's just a back piece. You're not going to like lose tremendous DPS. Nothing too bad is going to happen at all. So if you can't get this, honestly, it's no big deal. For the rings, this is where it does get a little bit important, is the Band of Frosted Thorns, which come out of Heroic Nexus, and it's a really good starter ring for, you know, at least one out of the 2 rings that you're gonna need. And then obviously you have the absolutely broken Ring of the Kirin Tor, which is gonna cost you an absolutely massive amount of gold. I would only recommend buying this if you have a surplus of money, but I mean, the stats are amazing, the attributes are amazing, I mean, it's just absolutely best in slot. It's one of the best items you can get early on in the expansion. It is so good. So if you have the gold, definitely buy this thing. You will not regret it. Next up, we got the neck piece. Starting off, we got the Gold Amulet of Kings. This is the only strength necklace outside of raids, so ideally, you want to have this like as a top priority. Gives 47 strength, really good, solid critical strike rating as well. And then next up, you have the Titanium Impact Choker. 84 attack power is pretty good. You got a little bit of agility. Has a socket in there, so you could put some strength into it. It's not the best, but it does come from jewel crafting, so you could potentially get it if you have a frozen orb, and you could afford it. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, that I created the Excel spreadsheet with all this information laid out on where to get the loot, and how many items you want specifically drop from which dungeon to help you maximize your efficiency as much as possible. So please, for a really good visual reference, check out the Excel spreadsheet below. So the personal route that I would be going on at the start of Wrath of the Lich King launch, obviously, I'm not going to try to zoom to level 80, but when I hit level 80, the first thing I'm going to try to do is go run Heroic Nexus. It has 4 pre-bis items in there for us, and that is insane. 4 items in one dungeon, that is potentially massive for us. They drop a ring, a trinket, belt, and boots all in one dungeon. Also, if I'm wearing a specific tabard, I'm also farming up reputation too, so that's a lot of good things that can potentially happen in there. Moving on to number 2, if you manage to get a frozen orb from there, maybe you can possibly buy one off the auction house, or have a friend lend you one, or a guildie give you one, and you could potentially get out a Titan Steel Destroyer very quickly if either you have your blacksmithing up, or if someone else has it up already. So if you're able to get a weapon like the Titan Steel Destroyer very quickly, I mean, Jesus, God in heaven, you are going to crush people with your damage. You're going to make everyone else look silly. After that, I would definitely focus on going to Heroic Utgard Pinnacle for a chance at 2 different types of trinkets, because you're obviously going to need one of them no matter what. So that would be huge if you can get one of those. And I would minimum be focusing on those 3 things every single day, while most likely wearing the Ebon Blade Tabard to get exalted for the boots, as well as the head enchant. Or you could wear the Sons of Hodir Tabard so you can get the shoulders, a mount, and the shoulder enchant. So, you know, you get a lot of benefits from either one of those. It's really just up to you and what you want to focus on first. But after that, it's really just about filling in some armor pieces, which shouldn't be too difficult. But I would definitely 100% repeat those first 3 steps a bunch of times until I get all the items I need from those places. Remember, weapons and trinkets first. After that, you know, focus on the main big boy pieces, like maybe that Dalaran ring or that beautiful chest piece that I was talking about earlier. But yeah, that's definitely what you want to focus on. But okay, ladies and gentlemen, that's going to wrap up this video. I want to thank you all for watching. It's truly been an absolute pleasure to make content for you all. If you can, please don't forget to hit like and subscribe. It means the absolute world to us. We're brand new to making WoW content. We've been playing this game for 15 years. If you made it to the end of the video, if there are any of you still out there, comment, I want bis. I want to see if there's anyone even makes it to the end of the video. I'm just curious. Anyways, guys, my name's Sky from the Comeback Kids. I'll see you all in the next one. Peace.